In today's age of the digital world, social media has completely changed the way that we interact and communicate with people in the world around us. And something that I'm seeing a lot of these days on social media is this idea of people who are embarking on their healing journeys, right? People who are determined to want to better themselves and improve their quality of life, whatever that might be, whatever it is that they feel that they need to heal from. There's a lot of people right now that are stepping into this era of wanting to be the best version of themselves that they could be and step into their full power. And that's what I want to talk about today, which is the idea of the phoenix, this powerful symbol of rebirth and transformation, and the idea of being able to unleash the inner power that is within every single one of us. My name is Kelsey Elizabeth Matthews. I'm 25 years old, and I'm coming to you today from Middlesex County, Connecticut. And I'm going to tell a little bit of my story. I was originally from East Haven, Connecticut, which is about an hour from where I am right now. And I was born 3 pounds, and I was addicted to drugs. My mother had a substance use disorder, and so I was born into quite a bit of chaos and a very unfortunate situation. And as infants, as newborns, each of us come into this world completely powerless, right? When you think about babies, they rely on their caregivers to meet their needs. And all of the power that that infant has is placed in the hands of someone else, because babies, toddlers, and children, they're reliant on the people that they are supposed to be able to trust the most in their lives, the people that they are supposed to be able to trust to care for them, that they are going to do right by them and meet their needs. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen, right? And that was the case for me, where things were not always done right by me. And so the power that I had placed in other people was not put to good use. And that's super unfortunate because it happens to a lot of us, right? So I grew up in this very tumultuous environment with my mom and her drug problem. I was one of her primary caretakers. And at a very young age, I was expected to be parentified, right? I was a parent to my parent. And that should never happen. But it happens more frequently than you would think. And so growing up, I continuously, even in adulthood and young adulthood and adolescence, was having that power taken away from me, right? Because as we get older in our childhoods and our young adulthoods, we start to gain more power over ourselves. We get the autonomy to start to make some decisions. And by the time you're an adult, right, you are that full authority in your own life, and you step into that power to determine which direction that you are going to take your life. And so growing up in a home where emotional and psychological abuse was normal, I learned some patterns and some unhealthy behaviors that I took with me into my adulthood. And we know with trauma that when a child goes through trauma at a young age, it changes the way that their brain works, and it changes the way that they function in and relate to the world around them. And that was definitely my situation. And oftentimes when children go through relational trauma or abuse in childhood, especially with their caregivers, they go on to repeat those cycles or the behaviors or the patterns that they were taught in adulthood. And that's exactly what I did, right? So I went out into the world, I turned 18, and I went ahead and I moved to Las Vegas because I knew that the only chance that I had at creating a future for myself that was different than the generational curses that plagued my family for so many years was to remove myself from the situation. So I got on a one-way flight at 18 years old, right after graduating from high school, and I moved to Vegas. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew that that was my one shot to be something and create a life for myself that was better than the people that came before me had. But what I also didn't know is how vulnerable I was. I didn't realize that I was entering the world with a target on my back because my upbringing made me very, very vulnerable to continued abuse. And what started to happen to me was I started to repeat these patterns in my relationships as an adult. So my power was put in my caregivers as a child, as they is for all of us, right? But as an adult, I started to repeat that cycle, that relationship cycle. And I was just attracting very similar types of people and similar types of relationships. And that actually happened in the form of what was institutional abuse. So I had the relational abuse as a child, right, with my family. But I was falling into these patterns as an adult to where the abuse was coming from institutions and professionals and leaders, because institutions are supposed to be safe places. And it was much like my upbringing. I was putting my trust into the hands of people and places that I thought were supposed to care for me and supposed to help me. And so the first time was a therapist. I was emotionally and psychologically abused by a therapist. The second time was a church leader, and the third time was a professor. So we had a healthcare facility, a religious organization, and an academic facility. And the first time felt like a really bad dream, right? I didn't think that people like that could actually exist. And the second time felt like a really bad case of deja vu. But the third and final time, I realized that this was a pattern. There were two patterns. It was a pattern with the institution, but it was also a pattern with me. And that was where my healing journey began. And that was when I set out on taking my power back, because I felt like, why do I keep going through this? I was hitting my head on the wall and I was saying to myself, why do I keep repeating this over and over? Why am I getting stuck in the same situation over and over? And so I started asking myself questions. I started asking why. And at first, for a while, I felt like these people keep stealing my power from me. Why? My power was stolen from me. My autonomy was stolen from me. And at first, as a child, that was true, right? And with the therapist, that was true because that was a licensed professional. But as I started to repeat these patterns, I realized that I was the common denominator in this situation. And this is when I learned and I realized that taking your power back is not this, it's not this magical experience like we see on social media, right? People go on social media and they put their best foot forward and it's like, oh, I'm taking my power back and it's this very empowering experience. Well, it is, right? In the end, when you reach the end and you hit that point to where you have reconnected with yourself after trauma and abuse and you're in that recovery period. But I had to ask myself, what am I contributing to my own suffering? And I believe that that is where taking your power back and unleashing that power that we all have within us really starts. It starts when you stop looking externally at the world around you to either try to blame your situation externally or fix your situation externally. And that was where this began for me. This is where the idea of the phoenix, right? When you think about a phoenix, it's a mythological bird that every 500 years, it goes into its nest and it lights itself on fire and it burns. But from the ashes, a new phoenix is risen, and it's a newer, stronger version of itself. And that is how I started to see myself in my own journey. And that started with understanding that I was giving my power away. It wasn't necessarily that it was being stolen from me. In some instances it was, right? Because I was being exploited by these professionals and these people that I trusted. But how much of that was because I was giving that power to them? And this is where I really was able to step into my own power. And of course, as a Christian and as a believer in Jesus, I know that my power truly comes from God. So when I decided that I was going to reconnect with myself and reconnect with God and partner with God and say, I don't want to live like this anymore, I want to do this different, that was really where it began for me. And so for me, it was a lot of self-accountability that I had to start walking in and saying, okay, I'm contributing some things here to my own situation and to my own suffering, and understanding that taking my power back was not going to be this really fun experience. It's painful. It's painful and it's messy. You cry a lot of tears going through this process. You experience a lot of pain. You have to sort through the trauma and drag yourself up from rock bottom and trudge through the mud and go through the junk. You have to unlearn things. And you have to be able to finally, especially for someone like me, right, who was so codependent and so reliant on other people for my well-being and my happiness, I had to say enough is enough and start slowly but surely taking back control over my own life and my own experiences. And so for me, this idea of unleashing the power within you, it starts with you. And I think that's a lot of the problem that a lot of people face, right, is that we're always wanting to look externally. We're wanting to look externally for the next person that's going to come along and make us feel better and to fill the void. We're wanting to look for something in our external reality to control, to blame, to say, well, because this happened, then I reacted this way, or because this happened, I'm in this situation. And when you start to take your power back and say, okay, these things happen to me, but they don't have to define me, or these things happen to me, or did they happen for me? And that's how I started trying to look at life and trying to say, is life happening to me or is it happening for me? And so in every experience that I've had, I've tried to go in and say, okay, what is the takeaway from this scenario? What is the takeaway from the situation? This happened. How can I learn from it? How can I grow from it? And how can I move forward from it and use it to become the best version of myself that I can be? And with self-accountability comes self-compassion and being able to give yourself the same love and grace and care that you would give someone else. And so these are just some things that I've learned as I've really stepped out on what social media is calling right now this healing journey, what social media is calling the idea of taking your power back. But in order to take your power back, you have to be able to come to the realization and the understanding that it's not going to be easy, but it's definitely going to be worth it. And so through these experiences that I've had, I started my own company called Phoenix Rising Coaching and Consulting. And I'm wanting to take all of the experiences that I've had in my life and the trauma that I've overcame and the healing that I've done and the lessons that I've learned. And I want to be able to take those things. I want to be able to apply them and help other people apply them. And so through Phoenix Rising, I'm looking to work with individuals and companies and leaders and just anyone who is either looking to recover from the trauma and the abuse that they've endured, or simply just grow and learn and become the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be. But I want to be able to help people unleash the power within them, right? Discover that inner phoenix, because I believe that we do all have that inner phoenix. We all have the ability to find the beauty that is within the ashes of the pain that we've endured, and not only rise from that and grow from that, but take that pain and take that growth and take all of the lessons and everything that can come from what we go through in life and really use it to not just empower ourselves, but empower others. And so through this process and through this journey, that is really what I'm looking to do as I've unleashed the power within myself. I've unleashed that inner phoenix and I've stepped into this new season of my life as I heal and grow, wanting to be able to walk other people through that process as well. And so if you're watching today and you can resonate with anything that I'm saying, I just want you to know that it's so possible. Healing is possible and rediscovering yourself is possible and taking your power back is possible, but it has to start with you and you have to be willing to do the hard work. But I'll tell you, it's not easy, but it is the greatest thing that I've ever done for myself. And it can be the greatest thing that you ever do for yourself as well. So thank you all so much for listening this morning.